What secret have you and your sibling managed to keep from your parents? That my little sister didn't break her arm by accidentally falling off the bunk bed, but rather that she broke her arm when we flung her off of it during a game of King of the Hill. Bunked. My parents were out at aerobics class, in a very pre-cell phone age. We just tried to keep her comfortable and waited patiently for them to get home. We did finally tell them last year, and they thought it was hilarious. We kept that secret for close to 30 years. Once you said aerobics class, there was no need to say pre-cell phone era lol. That my sister got arrested in college for stealing hay to spread around a friend's yard as a hearty frick you. Had to find an adult who knew how to bail her out BC I was 17. Then wait 4 hours just to drive her drunk butt back to her dorms. Her punishment from the judge was to volunteer at a local barn shoveling hay and horse poops around. That's actually a pretty reasonable sentence. When we were in middle high school, my younger brother used to get in trouble at school a lot. Whenever the school called our house to inform my parents, I would answer the phone and pretend to be my dad. Respect. I was only about 9-10. When my older brother would get home from high school, he would constantly ring the doorbell for me to open the door. He has his own keys, but he just kept ringing. It annoyed me almost every day. One day I start yelling out to open it himself. He kicks the window by the door. It shatters and a tiny shard cuts my foot. No big deal, just a band-aid fix. We call mum and dad saying someone threw a rock, and my brother even found a rock outside as evidence. Mum and dad call the police later when they get home. Police arrive. There's a full report done. And my brother and I have never mentioned the story again. I'm glad that it wasn't some hardcore detective crap, where he asked how I injured my foot. Oh, and another story. I was still in primary school and I had a day off school. So I was home with dad and he was pretty much asleep most of the day from night shift. I go to open the curtains and my brother, who is supposed to be at high school, is sitting behind the couch with a few magazines to keep him occupied for a whole day. He says don't tell dad, and dad never found out. That my brother's truck wasn't technically broken in two. He accidentally locked his keys in the truck while shopping at Goodwill for a tie for his interview he was on his way to. So he immediately called the insurance company telling them his car was broken into and was asking if it was covered. They said yes. So he takes the tire iron out of the bed of his truck and smashed his own window in to get his keys. Insurance fixed the window and he got the job. For some reason all I can think of is the song All I Do Is Win, playing in the background as these things are happening. For some dumb reason my parents' high school reunion was in January in Ohio. They decided to get a hotel closer to the event space since we lived in a rural area, leaving the kids alone in the house. Naturally we threw a giant butt party. Everything seemed to be fine around 3 AM after cleaning up, but we noticed that people had parked on the grass, leaving tire tracks all over the lawn. We were totally fricked. The next morning we woke up and were blessed to find a full blanket of snow covering everything in sight. It stayed on the ground for ample enough time that the tracks became totally unnoticeable. Parents still don't know 19 years later. Dear Mum, you weren't so tired from wrapping Christmas presents that you put them in the wrong stockings. Me and Robert bartered the size and shape of them in the morning before you got up. Sorry XX. Better take that one to the grave. That my little brother didn't break his arm playing baseball. He broke his arm while we were sword fighting with baseball bats and I saw shot and I took it. Nice username by the way. Not me but my kids. They are 10 and 12 and they have a live chicken in the garage they saved from our hillbilly neighbor. They think I don't know. It's frickin' hilarious listening them talk in code. So funny. Don't tell dad about the icon J and the Arajagay. I took care of some minor debt he had with some shady drug dealer that had him in trouble. He died last month, unrelated, and took it to the grave. There's no point telling them now, so I will too. I'm sorry for your loss. You're a good sibling. I have a story based on the opposite. My parents and I had a secret we kept from my brother. He lied to my parents a lot and had a tendency to do whatever he wanted regardless of the consequences. So, my parents had that family locator planned so they could track him. Basically, they could see him as a little pink dot on a map. It was actually a good thing that they had it, as they were able to find him after he left a party one night with a concussion. Somehow, my brother never knew. Eventually, my parents forgot about the locator when my brother was in college, but they still had it until one of my brother's best friends, still not sure why my parents told him about it, informed my brother that he was nothing more than a pink dot to my parents. Good times. Not sure if all of the plans are the same, but my parents got that for me and my brother, and it sent a text to our phones saying that parents' number can now see your location. We just acted like we didn't know and turned our phones off when we did sketchy crap. TLDR. Ruined sentimental artwork. Busted butt to get it replaced. My mom and her new husband took a belated honeymoon trip to New Orleans, which was where he used to live in his early adult life. While there, they ran into one of his old friends who had begun selling artwork as a street vendor. My mom secretly bought a beautiful, one-of-a-kind drawing from the vendor and as a Christmas gift for her husband, and I suggested I build a frame and mount it while my less crafty brother paid for materials. She agreed to this great, thoughtful family gift and gave me the drawing to work on the frame. The house I was living in was very small, so I had just enough space in my room for a desk and craft station in my room when the door was closed. As I was working on it, my roommate slammed open my door and knocked over an ink bottle from an unrelated project and completely ruined the artwork. After talking about what to do, my brother and I decided to use clues from my mom's trip photos to find the vendor and eventually found him through Facebook. We messaged him, bought another very similar drawing, had it overnighted to me, and I finished up the frame on schedule. Mom never found out and it's now prominently displayed on the wall immediately inside their front door. Very smooth. I'm impressed. I got hit by a snowplow, rather, the snow coming off the plow, while building a snow fort right next to the road. Shot out of the fort and tossed 10 feet away. I still hate plows. That's gotta hurt. I don't think they know about the time we got into the unwrapped Christmas present stash and looked at all our presents about a week before Christmas. They never said anything about it, at least, but I felt really guilty about it, especially when it came time to unwrap and I had to fake surprise. Never wanted to get into the Christmas stash again after that. At one point, we were playing with our pet lizard outside and he ran away, so we panicked and went off to the pet store to replace him before the parents got home. We confessed that one to them after a few days, mostly because the replacement was pretty obviously a different lizard. They responded with, "Oh, okay, we honestly wouldn't have noticed if you hadn't replaced him. Why would we care if you have 3 lizards or 4? One year my parents got my brother and I a Super Nintendo that came with a Link to the Past. We found it downstairs in the crawl space. We unwrapped it and played it all night on Christmas Eve and then put it all back in the box and rewrapped it. They never knew." When I was about 8, my little sister and I broke a candy jar. We told our stepmom when she called and she said it's okay. Throw away all the candy, it's old anyways. Being the unsupervised children we were, we ate every last piece. Probably about 300 plus pieces of candy total. The next day we were throwing up all day and our parents assumed it was the flu. We didn't touch another piece of candy for several months after that. Pretty chill parents. I'd say they knew and just thought your conditions were enough of a punishment, but because honestly anything else would just be mean. Sister and I were once playing with our little brother and throwing him onto our parents' bed. I was holding his feet, she was holding his hands. On the third swing we would let him go flying onto the king-sized waterbed. On one throw, sister was laughing too much and let go of brother's hands right at the bottom of the swing. I ended up swinging him by his feet into the bottom of a bedpost. His head was split open a 1/4 inch or so. Bled as head wounds do. We cleaned everything up and convinced him to stop crying by the time that mom and dad got home. He was maybe 5 at the time. I'm one of 3 kids and my sister, with help from me, has managed to hide 2 tattoos, one above her ankle and one under her armpit. My parents hate tattoos and I mean hate. So much so, that there is a clause in my parents' will which states that for each tattoo on their child's body, 10% of that tattoo child's inheritance is to be taken away and then split to go to the other untattooed children's inheritances. My mother purchased a TV that could be locked with a pin and she did. My brother and I figured it out though as it was very easy. 4321. However, after a few weeks she caught onto it since the TV was warm when she got home. so she changed the pin to something complicated. However, a few days later we distracted her while she entered the pin for us and watched what buttons she pressed. From now on we put a fan next to the TV to keep it cool, and we also ran our fingers across the screen to remove static charge when she got home. Worked for years and years. Sometimes they ask and I order tons of junk food, buckets of Popeyes, big pizza for all, etc. When our parents aren't home, we feed like animals after 4 months of winter who found a fresh prey. Then we destroy all the evidence. Other than that, we don't have many secrets. We aren't doing drugs or robbing people as far as I know. But sometimes I skip school to sleep, and my sis sees me. I just tell her to don't tell our dad. She just replies with okay. She kept many of my lazy secrets. We are a boring family. Your sister is like no one cares. PLS, stop bothering me. I blew myself up when I was 16 after a whole summer of blowing up other crap with black powder we found in the back of a shed. My brothers and I have never been sure if I got away with it or if my parents just figured I'd learned my lesson. We knocked off the glass window in our room when we were fighting and it fell 3 stories down. Fell on top of our car. We said it fell because of strong winds. So confused. WTF, how? I didn't split my head open falling backwards on my scooter. My best friend at the time threw a big butt rock at my head and I didn't want him to get in trouble, even though he didn't even apologize or feel bad about it. I also didn't want people to freak out before my parents got me because my plain white shirt was literally soaked in blood. I just grabbed an empty fruit punch Gatorade out of the trash and said I spilled all over myself. I was never allowed to do anything onwards without a helmet outside. You're a good friend, unlike your friend. My mom is terrified of cats, but me and my sister would find cats in our backyard and let them in the house for a few minutes and play with them. We obviously made sure they left to go back to their original owners. I like you. You've got your priorities straight. Our parents would drop my older brother and me off at church for Sunday school and services each week. When they drove away, he and I would often sneak off and hang out with friends who lived nearby the church instead. They thought we were learning all about their religion, but we were actually learning about girls instead. I drove my brother and sister to school when I was in high school back in the mid-80s. One morning, it had been raining all night and all morning. My sister asked me to pull my car across the yard and up to the front door so she wouldn't get wet. We had a huge yard, over an acre. I got stuck in the land barge I was driving, a 1972 Monte Carlo, cutting 2 deep trenches 100 feet long across the yard to the front door. Absolutely murdered the yard. My dad would get soapy if we ever drove on the grass. No, we didn't have a nice yard. He was just an angry drunk. So I had to fix it, fast. When we got home from school in the afternoon, my brother and I collected pine cones and pine needles from all over the yard and covered up the evidence. It was so obvious, but my dad stayed drunk and didn't immediately notice. The next spring, he saw the trench and thought he did it. He died a few years back. Not sure we ever told him. Told my mom a few years ago. She laughed. When I was 14 and my brothers, twins, were 11, we played a game called Catapult, where one of us laid on a bed, and the other 2 grabbed their legs and ripped him off the bed as fast as possible. They would usually go about 7 or 8 feet off the bed and slide on the hardwood floor after they landed. We never thought of putting anything for protection in the ground, so an injury was bound to happen. We decide to do it to the smaller twin, 75 lbs, and we yank him off the bed as hard as we can, and he goes further than we've ever seen. However, he did a sort of backflip when we yanked him, so he landed on his neck. Hard. We went over to check in him and pulled him up off the ground and his neck was bent forward really far and he couldn't move it at all. He also has a huge burn on his back from sliding so far. In a panic, we called my grandpa, who lived down the street, to come and check in on him. He comes over and doesn't know what to do other than just ice it and let it be. So we took his advice. When my mom came home, he was walking around the house facing the floor and couldn't make eye contact. She just thought he was being weird for the 2 days he couldn't move his neck, so she never asked us about it. My grandpa has never told my mom about it and none of us have either. Thank God nothing serious happened because it could have ended far worse. Oh my. pretty much all of our online activity from age 12 onwards was kept secret from our parents. Our house had a fairly strict no online activity rule, and my brother and I, being children with little else to do, we broke it extensively. When we were 12, we weren't very careful, and the parents caught us playing video games a few times. After the last time, which caused a huge fight, we became much more secretive. Keeping our internet use hidden was one of the reasons we founded our secret spy organization. Since then, the parents have caught us once or twice, but never at anything major. Our secrecy can't take all the credit, though. They are not very hard to fool. Once my mom came into the room when I was watching YouTube, suspected I was doing something online, and demanded I show her the computer. I had, like an idiot, closed the laptop without shutting down my tabs, so there was no way I could show her without showing her what I was watching. With that in mind, without saying a word, I got up, took my computer, and walked out of the room. Never heard another word about it. Still not entirely sure how that one worked out. My brother and I are both permanently sterilized. My brother hasn't told either of our parents, and I haven't told dad. We have told them on many occasions that there will be no grandkids. I colored all over the wall even though I knew it was against the rules. I told my mom the monster did it. Thank God she fell for it. My mom collects these painted plates and hangs them up around the house. There is one plate with this creepy old man and lady on it that for some reason my mom really loved but me and my brothers and sister hated, and she knew how much we disliked it. Well, one day mom come home to see her beloved plate on the floor in pieces. She sent each of us to our rooms and interrogated us individually. Each one of us gave the exact same answer: I don't know. It was like that when we got home from school. It must have fell on its own. She was pissed off and we had our TV privileges taken away for a couple of days because we were obviously all lying. But we never had to see that dang dish again. Now we all know exactly how that plate came to be destroyed. And every now and then my mom will still ask, but the answer is always the same: I don't know. It was like that when we got home from school. It must have fell on its own. It's been 15 years and it will be a secret we take to our graves. You can't leave us on that sort of cliffhanger. Signed, not your mom. My little brother, 9, and me, 11, once left our cat out in a blizzard for 3 days. He accidentally got out and we could never find him. My parents were both stuck at our grandmother's because of the blizzard while him and me were stuck at home. On the third night we heard a howling from the back porch. We go downstairs to see a howling, wet, shivering cat on our back porch. We didn't even recognize him at first. Eventually we let him in, washed him in our bathtub, dried him off and Skyped a friend of my dad's who happened to be a vet. He was fine. Parents never found out from me, my brother, or the family friend. That's a good family friend. I was camping with my dad, an uncle, grandfather and my little bro. The creepiest guy I'd ever seen was using a preteen girl to try and lure my little brother into their camper next to us. I was reminded of this guy when I saw Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. I told him not to go but she was pulling him along and he was far too trusting of strangers. I told my grandfather, who was cleaning a rifle at the picnic table, I didn't feel right about the man or the girl. Apparently he recognized the guy from his past. He went over with his rifle and spoke to the man who seemed like he'd seen a ghost. After a few words were exchanged, my grandfather brought my lil bro back over and told us to go play. So, we went and played on some dock catching chubs and sucker fish. The weirdo camping next to us was gone shortly after lunch, camper and all. I was 11 or 12 at the time, so I doubt my little brother even realizes what he might have avoided. I don't think I was well aware of it at the time either. My grandfather told us to keep quiet about it and that was it. He never told me the guy's name or anything when I asked about it a decade or so later. Just that he was in the military with him and not to worry about it. He's dead now, so I can't ask any follow-up questions. Bad but grandfather. When I was younger I went to Walmart and my brother was in charge of me. Well, I loved to run away from him while he chases me. Anyway, a man grabbed me while I was running and my brother saved me somehow, so I was almost kidnapped. Wow, this is one of the darker ones in the thread. When me and my sister were 9 and 12 we decided to take the family van for a spin. ended up crashing into a pole. We got the car back home and left it in neutral so it would roll into a tree behind our house. We had one of those really sloped driveways. Parents found the car later and just believed one of them accidentally left it in neutral when they parked. They still don't know, but it's made for some great inside jokes between my sister and I. I have an autistic brother and he couldn't speak until the age of 8. He was only about 5 at the time. But anyway, he was running around the house as we were playing games. He did this thing where if he wants something he just points. So he pointed at my dad's work shoes. So I go get them and he puts it on the floor and starts pee into my dad's shoe. I was like WTF at this moment. Then he starts running around just pee everywhere. I was laughing so hard, but I had an attachment to my brother and felt bad if my parents told him off, so I said the dog did it. Still feel guilt to this day. Sorry Clifford. They still don't know to this day and I doubt my brother even remembers. My brother was shooting a BB gun in the barn, which my father had banned him from weeks before. I was feeding animals while dodging his shooting lane. He ricocheted one shot right back into his scrotum, embedding the BB into his sack. He swore me to secrecy. A few days later the school nurse sent him to the hospital for an infected ball sack. He made up some excuse, and I never told my parents. It had snowed and me and my sister were walking to school. Our road was really icy and steep, so I decided to do a neat little skid. No worries. Bit shaky but a decent slide. Now my sister tried. Except she lost her balance, windmilled her arms and punched me straight in the face. Blood on the ice from my bleeding nose. So we left the house and walked back home within 5 minutes with me covered in blood. Just told mum that I'd slipped and fallen, so we both got the day off. My brother and I get tattoos together each year around Thanksgiving time. Either we are incredibly good at keeping them covered, or my parents aren't the observant type. I am the older sibling by 2.5 years, 3 school years. It was time for my sister's prom, and I was 21. So, she asked and I bought her alcohol for the first and only time. It was her prom. Well, someone got a hold of her phone late prom night and managed to phone my parents. They start freaking out when the person on the other end wasn't talking. But then in the background they hear my sister yell, "Who wants more beer?" So, I guess she got in trouble. But she didn't rat me out. It wasn't until I came clean years later that mom found out how my sister had gotten the alcohol in the first place. I broke my cousin's collarbone wrestling in the front yard at my grandparents' house. There was a very strict no roughhousing rule there, so I made him pretend it didn't hurt until the next day, where he would fake like he hurt it at football practice. He fought through the pain of a broken collarbone for over 24 hours just to avoid me getting my butt beat for wrestling at my grandparents' house. A second story, his older brother, who was 4 years older than us, took us squirrel hunting with BB guns. Or at least that's what our parents thought. Instead we stole a bunch of terrible whiskey from my grandparents' liquor cabinet and drank in the woods. We replaced the liquor with apple juice, and maybe 6 years later my grandfather threw it out because it tasted like crap. My brother is a huge pothead and I smoke occasionally. Dad has no idea. Bro is bringing edibles to make Christmas Mass more tolerable. Christmas Mass. My back and knees hurt just thinking about it. Thanks for reminding me. My parents had friends that lived in a very shady part of a small city 3 hours away. We used to visit frequently enough, and as such, have some stories that we still will not share with our parents. I can think of 2 in particular. We visited for a weekend in the summer. Some of the local kids were straight hood, but we were unaware of what that meant at the time. It was very hot that summer, and our parents gave us all permission to walk together to the public pool. On our walk home, we were parched. We saw a large arena-looking facility with the doors open, and could see a water fountain. We walked in to get a drink, and a woman stopped us. She proceeded to scream at us for entering the building, despite our pleas that we were just thirsty and we'd be on our way. Without warning, one of the hood kids throws up his hands like he's going to fight her. Then, we see a man walk over and draw a gun. He waves the gun at us and tells us to leave, or he will shoot us all. My brother was very young, and had never been exposed to anything like that. Naturally, this terrified him. We left the building and began the trek home, but my brother would not stop crying. We finally convinced him to tell my mother that a bee stung him on his head, and the swelling already went away. It worked. My sister, her friend, and I were hanging out in the local school's playground. It should be noted that they were 3 years older than me at the time. I was 9. A child came over to me and started calling me the N-word, and told me to go back to Africa, among other slurs. I knew what this meant, but could not understand what I did for him to call me names. My sister and her friend, knowing they were too old to do anything without getting in trouble, coerced me into teaching him a lesson. My sister told me that my mom would be proud of me for standing up for myself. He was smaller than me, but I did what my sister said and slammed the kid repeatedly into a metal fence. In all the commotion, I did not see the kid's big sister on the playground with us. She was about my sister's age, if not older. She walked over and punched me right in the face. I was shocked and hurt, and the tears immediately started to stream from my face. I remember being scared and looking to my sister for guidance. She yelled, "You better not take that." Hit her back. Get her, and so I did. The girl had a long, blonde ponytail. I remember seeing something in a movie, and I wrapped her hair around my arm and started wailing on her. After hitting her, I spun her around by her hair and straightened my arm. When her hair unwrapped from my arm, she lost balance and slammed into the brick wall of the school that was there. They left me alone after that, and we never told my parents about my first racially provoked playground fight. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.